And none of them are in prison yet?
No.
7 o'clock.
One of my good friends in high school was imprisoned in Florida for being a hitman.
Oh.
Nasty street.
Guess I was lucky.
Tough place out there. Call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone here this evening. I think everybody realizes it, but it is a work session, and we'll get right to work. First item is approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Paid second, all in favor? Motion carries. Old business, Unified Development Ordinance. Y'all gonna introduce Chad, or come on down? or what?
Please.
Yeah, Chad is going to give a brief update on the UDO project outline and then discuss some of the next steps. So he's got a presentation that he's prepared, and we'll go through it.
All set?
Floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, how you doing? Council members? I'm Chad Meadows. You know me. We've spent a lot of time talking. I'm here very briefly tonight to give you guys an update. We've been working with the staff. You want me to speak into the microphone?
Yeah, for the minutes.
Glad to.
Don't you have a mobile mic for me?
We've been working with the staff. We've got a contract. We've got a scope, and we've got a schedule. And I'd like to talk with you a little bit tonight about how that's going to work. I'll take probably 15 or 20 minutes. I know you guys are very busy. So we'll jump right in. I want to talk about just a refresher on the project goals and objectives. We'll take you through the proposed code chapters and the next steps in the project. Remember, our key objectives here with the UDO update are twofold. One, to implement your 2008 comprehensive plan, and the other is to obviously update the land use ordinance, okay? Some of the work that's been completed already identified 6 project goals for this, including preserving the small town character, making sure that we've got an efficient use of land, that we're unifying our development regulations, we're promoting safe and sustainable infrastructure, and most importantly, a predictable and efficient review process, okay, so that we are recognizing the kind of development that we'd like to see here in the community and creating a path to approval that is efficient and predictable, okay? One of the key organizational changes that I want to talk to you about is the fact that we are preparing this draft ordinance in Microsoft Word, not in InDesign. There are some draft chapters that were prepared earlier. They're prepared in InDesign. We are suggesting a shift to Microsoft Word. The image on the screen shows an example of the layout that we would like to suggest. Obviously, some of the things to see are a heavy use of tables, a heavy use of graphics, very clear headers and footers that navigate the reader, etc., nested text, generous white space, a document that is easy to read and, frankly, easy to look at. So that is our objective, and I think that you should expect to see a document that is richly illustrated and easy to navigate. The draft UDO structure that's been prepared up to this point includes 16 chapters and a set of appendices. We're suggesting consolidating that a bit into basically 10 chapters. They are set down on the right side, the right column, proposed UDO structure. This is a very intuitive system that puts like material together. A lot of modern development codes follow that. There is something at the bottom of the table, procedures manual. I'd like to talk with you about that in a minute. But before I do, let me just walk you quickly through these chapters so that you understand. The first chapter is basically a set of general provisions. Think about them as the boilerplate provisions. The main idea here in these standards are, how do we address conflicts? conflicts between standards in the ordinance, conflicts between standards in the UDO and the other parts of the town code, or conflicts with other state or federal laws. So this section sets that information out, in addition to basically the purpose and intent statements for the ordinance and so forth. So think about this as the operational chapter, boilerplate provisions, how we're addressing conflict. Chapter 2 is the procedures. Everything that's related to procedures is located here in this chapter. The two main ideas for you to keep in mind are: one, clear, measurable criteria for each decision. Each development review procedure should have a set of clear, measurable criteria associated with it. The other thing to keep in mind with this chapter is that there have been a variety of changing state laws with respect to protest petitions, Board of Adjustment voting, permit choice, etc. Those pieces need to be integrated into your development regulations, and this chapter will do that. In addition, we're also suggesting a somewhat standardized development review procedure structure, flow charts to talk about how the process works so that anyone could open the document and see exactly the steps in the process, how it works, etc. And a series of summary tables that provide information in a tabular form so it's easier to use. Okay? Chapter 3, these are your zoning districts. We would organize those by basically groups of districts: residential, business, and mixed use. You've also got some overlay districts. A couple of things to talk about here. One, a new hybrid downtown district. You've got a downtown overlay district. The prior work had contemplated a form-based code district. We spent a lot of time talking with the advisory committee and decided that perhaps something that was a little bit more incentive-based might be the right way to go for downtown. So we're looking at something that is a hybrid of a form-based approach and a traditional downtown district. I'm going to talk in a minute about kind of how we'll get there. Conditional zoning districts. Right now, today, the town uses special use districts. There's a quasi-judicial process that goes along with that. A lot of local governments across the state have moved to the one-step legislative conditional zoning process. We'll suggest that you guys consider that here, okay? It's faster, it's easier, it's less legally challenging. Chapter 4, uses. All of the provisions that relate to uses, principal uses, accessory uses, temporary uses, they're all located here with a single summary use table, a use classification system that helps staff decide how we classify unlisted uses. There's been some recent court ruling about not having uses listed in your code and whether or not those are prohibited. We'll address those kinds of provisions. The main idea here, let's codify the standards, okay, so that everybody understands the rules of the game, and where we can, to the point that that makes sense, let's promote administrative decision-making as a means of expediting review, creating additional predictability, okay? Development standards. These are the provisions that address how development looks on the site: the parking, the landscaping, signage, lighting, those sorts of things. Two things to think about here. The first is generally raising the bar for development quality, okay, so that the new development that results in town under the new UDO, there's a higher expectation for development quality, okay? But in addition to that, there's also procedural and substantive flexibility, ways for applicants to reach the desired development in methods that they can choose, okay? So that might be administrative adjustments. It might be menu-based standards. Pick, as an applicant, you may pick 5 of the following 10, and if you do, 5 of the 10, then we'll consider that to be acceptable. You decide which 5 work best for your project. So some of the standards, like the design provisions, will build into them these menu-based aspects. So think about raising the bar generally, but also infusing some flexibility into the process. The infrastructure chapter is bringing or carrying forward a lot of the existing material that you guys have out there today for streets, sidewalks, stormwater, sedimentation, etc. We are anticipating some changes to performance guarantees based on changes in state law and enhancing your homeowner and property owner association provisions, mostly to ensure successful transfer from developer to HOA. Chapter 7 is the nonconformities. These are the nonconforming structures, nonconforming uses, nonconforming lot provisions. We've also incorporated or suggesting some nonconforming signage provisions. The idea with that nonconforming sites thing is basically create a way for someone to redevelop their current nonconforming site in a way that doesn't trigger the requirement for full compliance with the code, okay? Communities that have full compliance requirements for nonconforming sites create a disincentive for redevelopment of those sites. It's very expensive to do so. What we would suggest is a nonconforming site approach that ties the amount of compliance you need to reach with the new code with the level of investment that you're making. If you're making a small investment, then we're only expecting a small amount of compliance with the current provision. If you're making a larger investment, then we'd want to see full compliance. So there's a little bit more opportunity for flexibility. The idea behind all of that is to incentivize redevelopment, incentivize repair, maintenance, and minor improvement to the uses that are in town, even those that might have non-conforming sites. Okay?
Isn't that option somewhat already available through permitting? And the reason I say that, I was talking, for example, to the mayor of Burlington, and he was talking about some buildings that they had, I forgot what he called the permit now, but it was, they didn't have to go to full standards with that type of permit. Joe, I think you and I asked you about that. I can't remember the name of it. You recall that conversation?
I'm not.
Okay. Anyway, I was thinking there was, I mean, I'm all for that. I was just thinking there was some avenue already under the permitting that somebody didn't have to bring it fully up to standards if they were just rehabbing.
It depends. Well, so there's building code compliance and then there's zoning code compliance. And the rehab code does allow you to make some changes without reaching full compliance with the state building code. But this is zoning code related stuff, and I think your current code is tailored to trigger a full compliance requirement.
Yeah, and we've had some sites where we've had to work with them just because they can't physically meet, you know, say parking requirements, for example. So we have internally worked with them on that, but.
Okay. I was just curious that, because I had understood that there was a method already there. I mean, I'm all for this. Don't misunderstand my motives here.
Sure,
I just
sure.
was thinking it was already available.
We certainly want to make it as easy as possible and create all the incentives possible for folks.
Yeah, it's been an impediment to some of our downtown development. There's no question about it.
You better believe it. Yes, sir. Chapter 8, enforcement. These are some basic provisions. These are just how you enforce your regulation. What are the violations? What are the remedies? What are the penalties, etc. Measurement and definitions is an important chapter. We're suggesting a lot more clarity to your current provisions through a section on rules of language construction. What does may mean? What does shall mean? How do we calculate days? Rules of measurement section. How do we calculate height? How do we find the rear lot line on a pie-shaped lot? Those kinds of questions are what the rules of measurement section does. It provides additional clarity about how the rules are interpreted and applied. We'll also be comprehensively overhauling your definitions and incorporating some additional illustrations to help people understand lot types, setbacks, required yards, how we measure height, etc. Chapter 10, reviewing agencies. These are the people who review and make decisions under the UDO. The idea behind this is simply to standardize the language and make it as easy as possible to understand who's making decisions in the process that they'll follow in doing so. Those are the 10 chapters in the draft UDO that we are getting ready to start working on with you. In addition to a new UDO, your staff has wisely incorporated a procedures manual in this project. The procedures manual is an outside document. It is not a part of the UDO, yet it addresses things like the development review process. I've put on the screen a picture of a table of contents from a comparable procedures manual, and you can see that it explains the reviewing agencies, it talks about each of the review procedures in detail, and then down at the bottom it has some appendices of important information, things like contact information, application forms, submittal requirements, etc. The things that you would need to file an application. That material is stored in the procedures manual, and it's done so in a way that allows us to make adjustments to that language quickly and easily without having to deal with public notice, etc. This is a really smart way for you to go. It cuts down on the breadth of your ordinance. It allows you to put things in your procedures manual that maybe you might not otherwise want to put in the codified code, things like commentary or suggestions or examples. Those are kinds of things you can put in a procedures manual and not have to worry about problems with codification. So that's an important part of this process. We would prepare the procedures manual after we've gotten through the drafting. Probably the most important piece of the procedures manual is the fact that you'll have a new suite of applications with specific submittal requirements for those new application forms. Okay, because you've got new standards, maybe some new procedures, you're going to need some new application forms. Project schedule. We are talking about a 16-month schedule from start to finish. We'll basically be doing investigation through the spring. We'll be drafting the UDO through the summer and fall of this year. We will hope to start the new year in the adoption phase, and then in spring of 18, we'll be preparing the procedures manual. So a 16-month schedule. That is a very doable schedule, and we're very comfortable that we'll be able to complete the project in the time that we've set forth. We'll talk about the outreach strategy. This is a very important part of the project. We have three basic tenets, three legs to the stool here. The first is a project webpage, which we will be preparing and we will be hosting, that will have all of the information necessary for anyone in the community who would like to know about this project, including the schedule, some frequently asked questions, contact information, all of the draft work program or draft material that's been delivered, how to get involved, when the next public meeting is, etc. All of that information will be in a single source. We will create for the project a brand, if you will. We're still working with staff on what that might be called, but the domain name for the web page will be the project brand. I don't know what it's going to be. Some of the ones we've used in other communities, New Code Currituck was one. We're working on one now that's called Transform Monroe. We're working on another one that's called Next Step 190. So I don't know what we'll end up calling this project, but the brand will be something that resonates with the community. We'll talk about what makes sense, what makes, what resonates with the folks here. Calling it the UDO project is kind of boring, so we'll figure out something there and create some interest, something that's attractive and easy to use. We'll carry that forward throughout the project. The second leg of the stool is a series of review of draft work product, both at the front end of the process during investigation and as we're preparing draft materials, review with multiple focus groups at key milestones in the process. I will tell you that we have built this scope in such a way that it's open-ended. And what I mean by that is we have structured it to create 12 trip days. Kara, myself, and members of our staff will be here in the community for 12 days. And how we use that time, we've left open so that we can meet with you, meet with the planning board, meet with the focus groups, do public forums if that's something that's appropriate. So know that we've built some flexibility into the engagement strategy. We anticipate multiple focus group meetings at key milestones in the project. And I'd like to take a second and talk about those focus groups with you. But before I do, let me assure you that throughout the process, we have built in ongoing updates with the Board of Commissioners so that you guys know what's happening, so you know what we're doing and where we are. We also stay in constant contact with staff. That's something that we've been doing for the past 6 months. We have regular status updates a couple times a month, if not more. So we stay in pretty much constant contact. Let's talk about these focus groups for a second. So the focus groups are people who live here in Zebulon, who know the community better than we do, and people of certain interests. So for example, we would suggest the planning board be one of our focus groups with a special emphasis on consistency with the comprehensive plan and town policies. We suggest formulating a developers council, a group of people who do development, own property here in the community. Those might also be developer representatives, attorneys, engineers, landscape architects, people who use the code on a regular basis and can get into the technical details associated with these documents. The Chamber of Commerce, the business interests here in the community. And then finally, citizens focus groups. Maybe these are HOA presidents, or maybe they're community leaders, community organization leaders, pastors, etc. Sort of the cadre of people who here in town are leaders in the community and who participate with their constituencies in ways other than the Chamber of Commerce or as development community folks. Okay, so we're trying to get a wide perspective, a wide range of views, and incorporate everybody at the right time in the process to ensure that everybody is well represented and that we have the benefit of their experience as we go through the process. These focus group members, particularly the Developers Council, these folks need to be professionals. They need to be people who are versed in development. They need to be aware of how the development process works generally and how the process works specifically here in Zebulon. And so, you know, one of the things that I want to be sure that we're clear about is that we want to be in a position to select these focus group members, okay? One of the key reasons why is this. There's two big reasons. The first one is focus group, developer council focus group members talk to other people in the development community so they can tell them about what's going on with the process. All right? So that's a very important function that they serve. The other thing that's really, really important about these folks being professional, as we go through this process, you know, we might decide that we want to do some impromptu testing, and we need some people who have the skills and the ability and the interest to assist us with that. It's not uncommon for us to ask a developer council, hey, would you take this, you know, these parking standards back and go apply them to a development that you're proposing or that you're thinking about, and let us know how it fares. Are we on target here? Are we too low? Are we too high? What makes sense for you and the projects that you're anticipating and the ones that you see coming down the pike? So they have a real practical, real world hands-on viewpoint, and we want to take advantage of that. Okay, so that's important. Another thing to keep in mind is if we're not careful about the focus group members that we select, the surest way for us to miss our schedule, the surest way for us to draw this project out and spend more time doing this is by using a focus group or a set of people who want to take charge of the process. That will add significant time and frankly significant expense. So we want to try to avoid that. And how we avoid that is by being careful and judicious in our selection of people and making sure that the folks who are there, frankly, are busy and come in and are ready to work, quickly focus, and then be done. So those are important things to think about. We're working with staff to form up the focus groups. Enough said about that. We think these are important. We think they're vital to the process. We think this is the right spread of focus group, and we've built the scope of work to allow us to have interactions with them as appropriate. Okay?
Chad, I did want to add that we've talked internally about also including a downtown focus group as one of these components as well, moving forward.
Great suggestion, yes, that the establishment of some sort of focus group to help us hone and shape that hybrid district is a really good idea. That's all.
Do you have a web page now?
Do I have a web page for this
For this,
project yet?
yeah.
No, not yet.
Okay.
We usually like to figure out the project name before we buy the domain. We have to put money down to purchase the domain, so we try to pick something that everybody's happy with before we spend money. So we have not gotten it yet, but that's certainly one of the first things we need to do, because we'll be pushing out information about upcoming meetings through the webpage. Does anybody have any suggestions about a project name?
Give that one some thought.
Okay, very good, very good. Know that that's something that we're working on. We see that as probably our first priority, is getting that webpage up and running.
I know because, some things, I hear and, it'd be nice to say, well, look, if you want to, send this out to Chad and them and let them,
Right,
let them, instead of me trying to transfer whatever they,
absolutely. It's a great resource. It's a great resource. It's nice to have everything in one place too. That's very helpful. If there are no questions, that's all I have.
Question? Onward and upward.
Thank you, sir. We are underway. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
thanks.
That's good. All right, we have the Wake Transit Master Plan.
The what?
Wake Transit Master Plan.
All right.
Go ahead, Chris.
I got one ahead.
You're welcome to speak on that.
I knew you didn't look like Toby, but, it's like,
I apologize. I thought my ass is to get up here and speak to y'all tonight.
I feel like I should be the one apologizing for that.
Yeah, just stay through this one.
Mr. Mayor, Board of Commissioners, good evening. I'm Toby Hampson with Wyrick Robbins. I've been asked to give an update on what's being called now the Wake Transit Master Participation Agreement. Just by way of background, in May 2016, the Wake County Board of Commissioners authorized a referendum that went to the voters in November to authorize a 0.5% sales and use tax, which is then used to fund the Wake County Transit Plan. In addition to that, in December, the Wake County Board of Commissioners also, and contingent on that, authorized a $7 vehicle registration fee, which will begin next fiscal year. The way that $7 registration fee works is it's collected by DMV and then paid to the county and is then paid out to the various municipalities and entities in Wake County who provide independent transit. So you're talking about Raleigh, Cary, Wake Forest.
How will that be distributed, Toby?
So it's distributed, it's sort of a
Even or just?
it's not even, it's based on, there's a formula for how that's distributed, but it's not just evenly distributed, but it's based on the services that are being provided by those various municipalities.
Okay.
Now, at this point, that's a very limited list in Wake County. I think, there's Durham to an extent, there's Raleigh, Wake Forest, Cary, and Triangle Transit. But so that generated a need to figure out how, with that distribution, there needed to be an interlocal agreement between those entities to allow for those funds to be kind of kept by Wake County to use for the funding plan. So that resulted in what I call the $7 agreement between those entities that basically just says Wake County can hold on to that money rather than distribute it and use it for the overall county transit plan. Once that was in place, step 2 was to come up with, okay, now we need an agreement for the purposes of determining who gets to sit on this advisory council. It's called TPAC, Transportation Planning Advisory Council. Who would be eligible for funding? 2, and 3, what are people's roles going to be in this advisory council? So that's how the Wake Transit Master Participation Agreement got started. It's been undergoing a number of revisions over the last several months, in which we've been involved. I think we're on version 9 or 10 at this point. And so that's what's before you. And essentially what this does is it provides all participating municipalities, which could include Zebulon, number one, a seat on this Transportation Advisory Council, and being in good standing with that, eligible for funding of implementation of transit throughout the county. In particular, so that would be sort of funded by both this half-cent sales tax, which is paid directly for transit, and the $7 registration fee. So the basic gist of this is entering into this agreement would give Zebulon a seat at the table in advising the county, Campo, and Go Triangle on what role they have in the Wake County Transit Plan and how that's going to be implemented going into the future. Recently, the discussion has turned, probably in the last several days, it's come to light that maybe unintended consequences, but as one of the conditions of being eligible to receive funding under the master agreement, a municipality would also need to sign on to the $7 interlocal agreement, even if at this point we would not be eligible to receive those funds to begin with. And that, frankly, is sort of the stick. The carrot is you get to have a voice at the table. The stick is, you need to, in order to receive funding, you need to sign on to all these agreements and effectively promise that in the future, if you were ever to become eligible to receive the $7 fee, i.e. if Zebulon instituted its own transit service, that would essentially be assigned back to Wake County. So that's kind of the trade-off here. So really, in short, where we are right now is that the original thought was to bring this before you at your March meeting. However, given the revisions and sort of the late-breaking news that this may now involve consideration of both the master agreement and the $7 interlocal agreement, I think the decision's been made to hold off until to present this to you in April for your consideration of both agreements. And so obviously we're here, we welcome any feedback and discussion. We're still awaiting the next draft of the master agreement, so we'll see how that goes.
I'm still a bit confused over the $7. Now, if we don't sign on, I understand we're not eligible for the other part. If we do sign on, I mean, they're going to collect that money anyway, right?
That's right. Everybody in the county is paying the $7 registration fee.
So there's really no harm to us financially by assigning to that agreement, but there could be a benefit. Well, there would be a benefit. So I don't understand why there would be a question to not sign on to it.
Well, I'm not sure there is necessarily a question, but sort of to present both sides of it, I think it's important to understand that in signing on to these agreements, to the extent Zebulon remained part of those agreements into the future, if for some reason there was an interest in developing its own independent transit, our hands would be a little bit tied there.
Would independent transit be like in-town circulators?
Yes, that would be similar to what Wake Forest and Cary both have now. Yes,
Wake
sir.
Forest is spending, I think, $250,000 a year on their in-town circulator. Of course, they're a lot bigger than we are too, but nonetheless. So, okay, I'll shut up, see if anybody else has any questions, but I was confused about I was just confused. If we didn't do it, like, why wouldn't you do it?
Well, it's certainly,
Y'all may see it different, I don't know.
certainly, you know, it's, I think the broader policy, and stated in the staff report here, it's, you know, it really is sort of consistent with this policy of upgrading and integrating transit in Zebulon with the larger county.
But they're gonna collect that money whether we're on board or not. And that's,
Absolutely,
I mean,
yes, sir.
that's, so our say-so has no effect on that. It's
Not-
just a
not in terms
matter
of
of whether
some-
we would be eligible in the future
Yes, sir.
for some of
So
that.
we're not getting, so I'm a little confused too on the thought. So we're paying, what is it, a half cent?
Half-cent sales tax.
Okay, and then we got to pay the $7, but yet we're not receiving any benefit from the $7. Is that correct as of now?
At this time, we're not.
Right.
Because we don't have our own transit plan. If, in the future, correct me if I get this wrong, Toby, let's say we decided we wanted to do an in-town circulator bus service that would just serve Zebulon, or we might do one for Zebulon and Wendell jointly, then we could ask for some of that money. But without our own transit system, we're
But we
not
still
eligible
have to
for
pay
it.
that money.
Well, our people pay it when they register the card.
Right.
And they're gonna pay that whether we sign on or not.
Yeah.
So it's not like we don't sign on, so then they don't have to pay it. That's not a part of the equation.
Yeah, I suppose the way citizens and residents of Zebulon benefit from both the $7 fee and the half-cent or half% sales tax, in theory, is in the greater countywide transit and
The
transportation
half-cent
system and
is
funding.
greater countywide and the others, the individuals are.
I kind of have a problem with everybody paying $7 and not getting any benefit out of it, but that's the way it is.
Do we need to put in our own bus service?
I know.
I guess, but I understand what you're saying, Dale, but we'd be cutting our throats, in my opinion.
Well, I understand
not-
that. That doesn't
yeah.
mean that I like it though, so.
Well, what does anybody else think? Y'all?
You know, is there any way we can use that money by not having a bus service or something like that, Toby? So say we wanted to put some bike lanes in, that's not part of it, transportation? Is there any way we can get the money besides, you know what I'm saying?
I do, and I don't have an answer to that question.
Because like the mayor said, we're putting the money in, you know, we just don't need a bus service now.
Well, the half-cent is going towards the bus service to here to Raleigh, the half-cent sales tax.
Yeah, but the 7 cents, what I'm
The
talking about,
$7,
transportation.
if we
or-
decided to do an internal transit system that was ours, like Wake Forest is
Well,
doing,
that's what I'm saying.
If we want to spend $1 million,
yeah,
to do
then
Wake
we're
Forest,
eligible
then
for
we
that
get
money.
$7.
Right, you're right, Dave. It may not be, you know,
That's what I was saying, if we
practical,
decided to put a bike lane in from downtown to Wakefield, would they consider,
Yeah,
Don
too.
shaking his head?
but I don't think so.
It's, that
But
would
that's a
fall under-
bike and-
That would fall under DOT rather than to go Raleigh or.
Go Triangle.
The trick, yeah, excuse me, go ahead. I
And
thought you.
I'll show
Correct me
you.
if I'm wrong, the transit plan is moving people from A to B on some sort of vehicle. That's not doing that. That's putting down something to move on, not in. Does that sound,
I think that's right. It's sort of transit versus sort of just general transportation. This is sort of.
So what about if we wanted to run a bus from Raleigh to the Mudcat Stadium for ball games? Would that
that'd be the half-cent?
help in a
I suppose that, I don't know. I don't have the answer to those specific questions as to how you constitute an independent transit service provider.
So how are you affiliated with the, since you're giving a presentation, are you affiliated with the Go Triangle thing, Toby?
No, sir.
just-
I've been taking part as your attorney in these discussions.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know if you represent them or not. I didn't.
No, sir.
Okay.
I'm there on behalf of Zebulon and talking through these issues and trying to negotiate it. So.
So do you have a well, yeah, I know you got a recommendation, but
Well, we'll see how it all plays out. I think at this point, you know, again, if the policy decision is made that Zebulon wants to jump on this train before it leaves the station with the rest of the county, then the recommendation would be to sign off on both these agreements. Yes, sir.
Well, like the mayor said, we're gonna pay it regardless, so it'd be useless not to be a member
Trying to
of
figure
it.
out some way we could use it, without having the bus service. I'm just, I don't know.
Ben, you had a question?
Yeah, one of the, I didn't see, as participant, the RDU, is that a separate transit authority?
I believe they are their own independent transit
So
authority.
they're not a member, they don't,
They have not taken part in these, in any of these negotiations under either agreement, actually.
Anything else? Okay, wait to hear from you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Todd. All right, pavement resurfacing, retreatment, all that good stuff.
you get your turn. It's too expensive living in Wake County. Huh.
just 1 second, I'm having trouble seeing my icon. Thank you, guys. Kurt, as you can tell, I'm excited about street paving. I want to get here and tell you about it. So, first of all, good evening, Mayor, members of the board. I provided you a updated copy of the revision of the presentation for you. We did find a few typos and revisions we needed to make over the weekend, and we want to get you the most up-to-date version of it. Tonight, we're going to talk about a two-part conversation that provides information on the street paving project, talks about the paving techniques we're doing, and then we also want to receive a little feedback on the trees in the right-of-way along North Wakefield Street that will be affected by this project. So tonight, this presentation is going to be a little bit of a show and tell, the way I phrased it. I got some handouts, and we also have a short video as part of the presentation that I'll be sharing with you. All right. This budget, as y'all appropriated as part of the 2017 budget, capital and budget this year, is $458,000. It's made up of the 2 cent tax increase and $298,000 of street paving funds. The consultant for this project is Lacey Love, who's with Volkert. You may remember Lacey from our retreat presentation last year, and I think he also made a presentation at one of our board meetings and stuff. One of the things that we are really excited about this part of the project is that we'll be able to provide 18% coverage of town streets with these paving techniques that we'll be using and stuff. So let's go to the next slide. Schedule ahead, to hit some of the highlights of the schedule ahead. We'll be looking to advertise bid on March 8th. We're looking to receive bids on April 6th. And we will look to issue notice to proceed around approximately May 4th and finish this project up in September. Here's the techniques that we're going to be using throughout this project. Some of them you're very familiar with. We've used in the past: crack seal, asphalt overlay, spot repairs. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit more about slurry seal and cape seal and the different various useful lives. Slurry seal is a product we have used before. We used it on approximately about 10 years ago on Spruce Drive. We used it then. Basically, it's approximately a 1/4 inch seal coat that goes over the protective coating. It's much thicker than maybe a little thin asphalt emulsion or something you might see on a driveway pavement that a lot of local contractors use. But it's basically there as a cost-effective method of putting down. It's one single application. It's cost-effective in the means that it's put down about $3.45 per square yards, and a typical asphalt overlay is 9.75. Now, how does that compare with useful life? Well, a useful life of a slurry is 8 years, and a useful life of a asphalt overlay is 12 to 15 years. And here to the right here, you can see a street in Nashville that our consultant did, and the before condition and the after condition. It looks very much similar to a regular asphalt overlay. The next product that we're looking to use on this project is what's called a Cape Seal. It's a two-step process. First of all, it's a chip seal. A lot of you might be familiar on NCDOT roads where they come down and put an asphalt emulsion down, product down, and then they put small chip seals down and then roll that in with a roller. So we're going to do that first. That's going to provide us some structural strength and elasticity and do some waterproofing. Approximately 3 weeks later, we're going to come back and put that same slurry seal we just talked about on top of this chip seal, and to thus give you a Cape Seal. So we're going to pick up some of the smoothness that you typically don't see in a chip seal product that the NCDOT would do, but we also pick up the strength and the smoothness of that slurry. It does got structural integrity. We don't anticipate any plowing from our town streets and stuff to cause any adverse damage to this product. Again, the useful life of this product is 10 to 15 years. It's approximately $6 a square yard, which is cheaper than the $9.75 per square yard for an asphalt overlay. The thickness on this is approximately 7/8 to an inch, and so that's the thickness of the product actually being applied. Got a little short video, if you'll bear with us, that talks and shows this process. It is, just to remind you, after you see the chip seal placed down and it rolled, there is a waiting period. Well, as you can see, this clearly makes a significant improvement to it. It is more cost-effective product. And just remember, between the chip seal process, there is a period of approximately 2 to 3 weeks where traffic drives on that roadway before the slurry is done. One of the things I would tell you is because our streets are curb and gutter, we're not going to be sweeping those gravel as you saw after the Cape, as the gravel was placed down. We'll use a sweeper to vacuum all that up. We won't be sweeping that into residents' streets and stuff.
I'm curious about, and it's purely a curiosity question, has nothing to do with these projects, so bear with me a second. In Virginia, I've seen them put down the asphalt and the gravel or whatever, and nothing over the top of it.
That is correct.
And is that still Cape Seal?
That is not Cape Seal. That's more of a chip seal, what they call a chip seal.
Okay.
And that's what you've seen a lot around town on NCDOT roads in town here. Actually, 2 years ago, I believe it was, they done a similar type process in front of the Public Works facility. Basically, by adding that slurry seal on back of it, we get a little bit of smoother finish. Yeah. And we tighten it up a little bit from a...
No, I wasn't proposing that, that you shift gears on it. It was more of a curiosity question because, quite frankly, I was really surprised at how well the road came out when they finished, because I thought, this is nuts. What are they going to put over it? You drive down it, rocks or chips hitting your vehicle and all. Smooth right out. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, thank you.
No problem.
Chris?
Yes, sir.
What was that on Horton Street?
That was the chip seal that was placed down.
What about in front of the elementary school? I don't know why I can't think of the name of that street. I never
To
can.
our Proctor Street?
Proctor Street.
That's DOT, isn't it?
That was DOT,
Yeah,
but,
but what is that though? It's-
I'm trying to remember if that was a chip seal or just an asphalt overlay. I'm leaning to say that was a chip seal. I know. But so basically, after time, it almost looks smooth. If you look in front of the Public Works office and Proctor Street, it gets to be fairly smooth, but putting that slurry on top of it, we immediately get that effect and tighten it up and get a smoother looking product that looks closer to an asphalt overlay.
Didn't they do something like that similar to Tippett?
On Tippett, I think they did do a chip seal over there also, but not a cape. DOT has not done any cape in this area that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Did you, can you run like a snow blade on them pretty good?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Like me, that would knock a lot of gravel off.
The structural integrity, if you just think about on Proctor Street, that's been there, Horton Street, this past year, we've been plowing operations there, DOT's done plowing operations there, and we're not seeing any adverse damage to the roadway.
It's just not a very good ride.
I know, and that's why we're gonna fix that by putting a slurry over it to make that smoothness and that water tightness. I think you'll like this product much
Right.
better than the actual Cape Seal. One of the things that we are excited about this project, you see here in this overhead, that we have got 3 areas of insets that we're looking to do town. Like we said, we're gonna cover about 3.5 miles of coverage, or 18% of the town streets, with a different type of product, whether it's cape, slurry, crack, or asphalt. Here's a highlight of one section of the insert on 1, where you see in the red here, we are to be doing an asphalt overlay using traditional techniques that have been seen in Zebulon for an overlay. East Franklin Street here, we'll be using a cape seal over here. And in this section of roadway is a little bit better coming on West Franklin, we're using a slurry seal. So based on the road's rating and condition and all, we chose the product that best extends the useful life of that. I don't want to go over all of these, but you can see that here. We got those available in case you have questions from your citizens. Inset number 2 is predominantly over in Pineview. As you well know, that subdivision is a little over 20 years old, so it makes sense that we are making investments into the roadway there. The entrance of Pineview, where you see red, we are going to do a little bit of an asphalt overlay from the traffic coming in, pushing and raveling the asphalt. You see us coming here on Spruce Drive, doing a slurry seal on that product, and then maybe down here down at the bottom on Smoky Mountain, we're doing a cape seal. So we're doing some variety of different products. Dulcimer here is getting crack seal. One of the couple locations in town we'll be using crack seal, where we'll be trying to fill up the longitudinal and latitudinal cracking across the street. And as you've seen in the past when we've done crack sealing, the goal is to keep water out so it don't deteriorate the subbase. It also does not allow the freeze thaw during the winter months.
Chris, what do you attribute, again, another curiosity
Yes, sir.
question, but Cedar Drive and Pineview Drive have been there since the beginning of the development. What do you attribute the deterioration of these other streets, just the way they were constructed? or-
Probably where their construction and the material is there at the time. It could be a lot of different factors, traffic, weather, how well the road maybe has a crown and whether it holds a little bit of water or something like that. So it could be a multitude of factors.
It's just kind of amazing to me that those streets have held up, and especially Pineview, because that's the main,
Yeah.
the main drive.
I'm not personally familiar with Pineview's construction techniques with the stone and how much asphalt's on it. I've never fixed a water leak there, which is a good thing. And I wasn't here when it was originally construction. I can feel a little more knowledge about some of the other ones. But Pineview, you're right. It's held up well. It's seen a lot of traffic.
Right.
I know.
Right, okay, just curious.
Yeah, good question.
Chris,
Yes, sir.
that slurry seal,
Yes, sir.
it doesn't crack like regular asphalt, does
No,
it?
sir. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned it. Here's a sample of the slurry seal. It's about a 1/4 inch thick. And they basically put it in a big blob and pressed it down for me. But this is what will be applied across the top of the street, and that'll be your finish. So you got a little
Yeah.
texture.
They got a rubber base or something on it?
Got a rubber.
Any kind of maintenance?
Sir,
It's a 8-year.
8-year useful life
Is there
on us.
any maintenance that you do to?
No additional maintenance that we would normally do to a street.
So after 8 years and you Well, what goes bad after 8 years in if it's no maintenance? I mean, really, what?
It will crack too.
Oh, Chris, I think.
Crack that thing there.
Typically, we'll go back and we'll regrade the street as we grade them manually, and if there's becoming sub-base failures or the asphalt emulsion is wore off, we might re-slur it, we could cape it, we could do a full overlay. Each road is going to tell us the story of what the condition is, and we'll apply the proper technique to it. I know.
So, can it be done again on it, or
Yes, sir.
do you have to just put a
You
asphalt
can
coat on?
reapply additional slurry on top of it, yes, sir.
Okay.
Hopefully, Curtis, it'll last more than 8 years.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it'll last more than 8 years.
I know, that's right, you know, I just don't.
This is a chart that you've seen before, you saw it at retreat, and we talked about it a little bit, what Lacey had provided. It talks about our existing pavement condition. If you'll notice that our current pavement condition score prior to paving this year is an 86.2. After paving, we're projecting to be at an 89.3. Up here in this chart here, we talk about our breakdown of actually excellent, good, fair, and moderate streets. We're going to see a reduction from poor streets from 7% to 3%. That's basically Wakefield Street. And you'll see a significant jump in excellent from 20% to 46%. So with that, after this year's paving, we'll have an overall pavement index score of 89.3. If we, for some reason, do not make additional investments until after 2020, we'll see a decrease in our pavement score to 83. Just a point of note, our engineer has said that us to maintain an 86 to 89, we need to invest approximately $250,000 a year in street paving. Any questions on some of the stuff we've received before? As we talk about the different techniques in street paving we're going to be doing, there's a potential for impact on some of these, on the four large, what I call character trees that add significant character to the North Wakefield Street project. We did, because of the paving and the milling, we could adversely affect the root system there. So we've asked an arborist to come out and take a look at these trees and provide us some insight to what kind of condition they're in. Those four trees that we graded were in a fair condition. He believes that typical street paving will have an adverse effect on these trees' health. And in his opinion, the trees had the potential to die within 5 years. I know. So tonight we want a little bit of feedback from this group to give us some direction. We're comfortable with both options. It's the board's pleasure. Option A is to remove the trees prior to the project and plant maybe an additional tree outside the right-of-way, similar to a project we did on West Cannon Avenue. Or we can say, okay, arborist, I believe you, but I'm not sure, and I'll really roll the dice on this, and we can wait on these trees, and we can address the tree health at a later date. If it needs to be taken down, we take it down. If it lives, that's great. It's a benefit for the community and those people that live in that area, because they are such character trees. So basically, we're asking tonight for a little bit of feedback and a little bit of direction from you.
What if we decide sometime in the next few, say, within 5 years, that we want to put a sidewalk there in those trees? Or
Depending on what side, if we put these trees are all located on the north side, or the right-hand side going north, the east side, thank you, Mayor. Right. If we decide to put the sidewalk there, there is a chance they could have to come out, probably a very good chance. We go on the west side, these trees would probably be able to stay.
Well, there's a lot more trees on the east side, period, not just these trees.
Yes,
but
sir.
there are other trees, a lot of big pine trees and all that don't have running roots.
what are the roots on those trees doing to the pavement?
You're seeing a little bit of root intrusion, what we call it, and seeing a little bit of cracking. We haven't seen a lot of damage yet, but you can start seeing the first signs of that damage. And one small place we did see a little bit of an upheaval. But when we go in there to make that crack repair and all, we'll be removing the asphalt and a little bit of the stone, where we can anticipate finding some of these roots. We might not, but it's a good indication that we might. And so we just wanted to make everybody aware that there's a chance.
When that road starts buckling a little bit, you know, it's kind of like some of the driveways that,
The worst buckle, interestingly enough, is up near Gannon, and it's the tree that's the furthest back from the road. And there's a little bit of a bump buckle there, but you can see, if you look at this picture, which is in front of Beverly's place, you can see where those roots have been cut off before. And the tree's still surviving.
There's a chance, yeah. I mean,
The position I've taken, one of the trees is on my lot, and I say my lot, but it's on the right of way in front of my lot. And the position that I have taken is that if they absolutely have to go, okay, they have to go. But if there's any way we can save them, that's what I'd like to see. And in my case, I've lived there, 45 years or so, and I've never seen a problem on the road in front of my house where that tree is. This is not a real hard buckle here. The one up near Gannon, and my neighbor told me he just spent a bunch of money pruning that tree the latter part of last year. I told him to send us a bill, but no. But the real bad one is up near Gannon, and you can see it. There's actually a bump there. Will the tree survive? I don't know. It looks like they've been beat on before, and they have. But I don't know. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball.
yeah, and I don't think we can say for sure either that it's definitely going to die or not die. So that's why we're asking for a little bit of guidance.
well, they are awfully close to the road. You know, I guess we've been lucky that we haven't had somebody run into them.
Well, if they run into them at my house, they got to get up over that curbing that somebody built there before I bought the house. But I don't think anybody's ever hit. It's a straight shot road. There's no bends. You know, I know you're familiar with it, but my hope would be that we give them a chance and see if they can live. But
I am too, on that. You don't see many oak trees dying. I don't care what you do to them, they're tough trees. And
Beth,
Give them a chance.
give them a chance. Ben?
B.
B. Don?
Yeah, let them live as long as they live.
Beth?
Well, I go along, I think probably the trees need to be gone, but I'll go along with whatever the board wants to do.
Well, if they have to come out later, they come out later.
You know, the cost of it happening right now, it's not gonna be that much difference than later, I don't think.
And the thing is, again, when we get into it, we may find that the roots are a major problem, and they're not a major problem. We don't know until we dig it up.
That's
you
right.
know.
Well, yeah, I think that's something we need to consider, because if we do get into pavement thing, and we run into a problem with roots there, we need to revisit.
Okay. Well, thank you, guys. Appreciate that direction. Any other questions that you might have on the project?
On Wakefield Street, are you milling up the road in places?
We will be milling it up in places. We're not doing a full mill. We're doing milling for spot repairs, and we'll be making those spot repairs and then making a 1.5-inch overlay.
Let me ask you one question. Where's Raleigh on as far as digging up the streets?
Raleigh, we have worked closely with Raleigh on this. First thing, when I sat down with Lacey, I had the benefit of having 2 water and sewer projects already been reviewed. I took them to Lacey and said, whatever you have, we're not working on these streets. So they've done all the work that we anticipate as far as their capital improvements program being done. Now, we can't stop an emergency water leak or something like that. We'll cross our fingers after we pave it that we don't have a water leak, but any planned improvements are not happening on these streets.
What if someone wanted to do a second water tap, and this would be the time to do it?
Yes, sir.
Would there be any financial advantage from Raleigh by the fact that the streets are going to be torn up anyway? You may not know the answer to that.
I'm not sure the answer, and I don't know if there's a potential that they could do a meter split where they actually don't have to make a tap. They actually come in front of the meter and split it, so depending on the application.
Well, let me just talk about my house. I put in a sprinkler system, and I put a split on a single feed line. Bad mistake.
Okay.
And so I talked to Kenny about it, and he said, well, you know, if you ever go out there and we're doing any work out there, meaning whatever, I can't remember if he was here at that time or not. I don't think he was. that would be the time to go back and take that split off and go in with a second tap so that I can get some water pressure on the sprinkler system, because if the sprinkler system's going, I can't do anything in the house.
Yeah.
So I have to do it like middle of
Late
the
evenings,
night,
yeah.
Early morning, but just a curiosity.
I would encourage you, if that's something you're looking at, to let's go ahead and move forward with that. And if you'll let me know, if you definitely decide to do that, we can look and see the schedule.
Do you know what the tap cost offhand? It used to be $800, I think. but-
I'm not sure
Now, the
offhand.
meter's set in there. I'll get with you later.
Okay.
Just want to say-
And the planning department's got,
They're more
Well, you
expensive.
can send you the bill, that'd be all right.
That house that was built behind it, that Kay had the lot listed, what was the cap, around $12,000?
it adds up when you pay impact fees and stuff. I'd ask you to talk to Julie and Mark. They deal with that, with customers coming in and giving that information. Raleigh, I think the number you quoted is the number we might have used to do in the tap several years ago.
Yeah,
So,
well, and I understand that,
I know that this one was an expensive.
but I
tap.
would like to know what those numbers are.
Okay.
So I can make a
We can
informed
get you that
decision.
information, sir.
You need to inform the citizens that live on Wakefield, and give them the option too. Same thing. I mean, they may,
Yeah,
I
that somebody
mean,
else may want to put in.
somebody
sprinkler
else may
system.
want to do it, and when the street's fixed, it's too late. And somebody fuss about it.
Okay. We'll try to get a as part of this whole project, we're going to do a public education campaign notifying them, but we can go ahead and get out to them. If somebody's looking to do some improvements, such as a water tap, we can get them to go ahead and get that process started. So we are not, the Raleigh's not digging it up behind we put it. That's just does not make good business sense. So,
Let me say that when those yellow ribbons went up, I got a lot of questions, not just people that had yellow ribbons, but people all around. You're gonna make some folks happy by giving it a shot. Because, I mean, even people that, my neighbor, for example, across the street doesn't have a dog in that fight at all, and he said, man, I'm glad those trees aren't gonna be.
Yeah.
You know, so,
okay.
and that's a sample of what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll live. But if they
Hopefully we'll
don't,
cross our
we'll take them
fingers
later.
and we'll have some good luck. And,
Thank you.
sir.
All right, Little River Dam. Joe, you doing that one?
I'm doing that one.
You're doing that
I
one,
just
okay.
want to move and see if I can get a map up in case we move there. All right. Thank you guys for bearing with me as we made that quick changeover. This map that I put up on the overhead projector is a map that's also included in your packet. So if you want to pull that out to look at it closer. Of course, I'm going to do this. Change the project zone. Tonight, we want to talk a little bit about some options to repair the damage at Little River Dam. As you know, on October 8, 2016, Hurricane Matthew tore out two large sections of this dam. That is very similar to what happened in 1996 with Hurricane Fran. It's also the same thing that happened very similar in 1999 by Hurricane Floyd. So as part of this, after the dam had sustained damage and stuff, we went to FEMA and applied for potential funding for replacement. At the same time, the city of Raleigh did the same thing. And you asked kind of why did both the town of Zebulon and the city of Raleigh apply for FEMA reimbursement under the Stafford Act? Well, you kind of got to go back a little bit and say, as part of the 2006 utility merger with the city of Raleigh, the town of Zebulon transferred via contract 3 water plant properties to the city of Raleigh. They took ownership of those by maintaining and running the water plant and the booster station. But in reality, come the fact that we have not legally transferred via deed and map those properties over to the city of Raleigh. So in reality, we have 2 partners. I call City of Raleigh a partner that has some ownership rights into the Little River Dam. So we both applied just to make sure that we had an opportunity to get reimbursement from FEMA for something we believe is historical and culturally significant to the town of Zebulon. So let's talk a little bit about what it's going to cost to put back the dam as it currently stands. These are currently projections and estimates. We did get some assistance from Snobble Engineering to help us with this information, but the preliminary estimate for design, permitting, and construction of a restoration project only, basically putting it back the way it was, similar to what was done in 99 and 96, is $344,000. Under a restoration project, FEMA is willing to pay for 75% of this project. Part of our, and then the other 25% will be picked up by the state of North Carolina. And all these project costs are on a reimbursement basis, so you have to upfront the money and then get reimbursed for that type of construction. Very similar to what we did in 96 and 99. This process could take 18 to 24 months by the time you go through selecting an engineer, do the permitting, the design, and the construction. So there's been some discussion about possibly doing a restoration and reinforcement type project because just what I just said, it'd been damaged twice before. That requires a separate process. You apply for FEMA funds to get a restoration, and then you apply with the state of North Carolina for the potential for hazard mitigation to look at doing, does this project qualify, and to have some additional reinforcement placed in. I know. Again, this project, it could be as much as $1 million depending on the scope of the reinforcement and improvements added to that dam. Again, that is a project that could take as much as 18 to 24 months to get complete. So, regardless of whoever takes the ownership of the dam, there's some reasonable maintenance issues that we need to take into consideration. We need to begin, if we were to take ownership of it as an example, clearly that decision is yours, but we would recommend an annual inspection by an engineer estimated about $6,000 to $8,000. We need to put insurance on the dam, and we also need to regularly inspect it for repairs for structural cracking, offset joints, and et cetera. And those costs could be variable depending upon how it's done. But it would be something that our staff would do probably monthly visits and do a little check-off list just to make sure, kind of like similar to playground equipment or similar to our vehicles and equipment, we do check-off lists on our buildings to make sure this structure is structurally sound, best to our knowledge. So what are we needing tonight? What kind of decisions are we needing tonight, and what kind of and the direction is staff needing tonight? FEMA is only going to allow one applicant to apply. So we need to decide who has full ownership of, or potentially, or ask for a delay, ownership of that dam. They have made that ruling to us. So we have one applicant can only apply. We cannot do a dual applicant piece where both the city and Raleigh and the town of Zebulon go forward. So we have laid out before you tonight a couple options. Raleigh would be as a project lead, Zebulon as a project lead, or if the board is uncomfortable at this point making a decision on that, we can ask for an extension to FEMA for more than 45 days. So we can break into these different things that are requirements for leads, but we generally kind of laid those out in the memo for you, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Mayor, let me interject some information that I became aware of this morning, if I may. The one option with Raleigh as the project lead, I talked to Raleigh's management this morning, and they have other FEMA-related projects or other projects that were damaged as a result of Hurricane Matthew. And given that this is not an active water resource, this would be a lower priority. So picking option A won't necessarily mean that it would be the expedited option. And so one thing that the board may want to consider, in fact, I'll go ahead, I understand this is a work session and we're looking for direction, but I'll go ahead and give a recommendation that given that Raleigh's workload would not put this as a priority, it might be a prudent thing to take the 45-day extension option and allow our two staffs to work together with what might be the more effective and efficient way to approach the repair of this dam.
My understanding understanding was that under the 45-day scenario, basically, if we decided, or it worked out that we would take the lead, basically we would be discussing land ownership. I mean, I have personally some real concern to giving our parkway to the city of Raleigh, that they could put it off limits, no trespassing, or, and I mentioned to Joe that we need a reversion agreement because they could sell it. You know, we give the property to them and they could sell it to developers at some future date. And in the future, we don't even know if they're going to need the current water plant and pump station. They may, but if Little River gets built, if it ever gets built, it may not even be useful at that time.
Would that property come back into our hands then, or?
Under the reversion?
Yeah.
Yeah, if they were to do something, the reversion agreement would say, yes, they can't sell it. It has to come back to us. I guess the real question, at least in my mind, is that what do they really need? Do they need all of that property that was under the?
What are they actually using it for now, other than the fact that it's
pump
there?
station there.
It's basically a booster station they're using now. They are doing some chlorine feed and some, potentially some fluoride. I'm not 100% on the fluoride, but I am pretty sure on the chlorine. Our 2006 merger agreement does lay the groundwork for what the mayor has talked about a reversion. If they have come to the decision that they do no longer need that water plant land, it does have that right to be reverted back to us. So that is in the merger agreement. But if we did go back to the Raleigh to try to iron out some of these other irons in the fire, we could maybe see if they're ready to make that decision now, and hopefully they are.
Yeah, if you look at that map, you can see the yellow line is all that we really retain. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't realize we were giving away that much. But we could revisit that. And did you have something about that?
No, but I think it's a good point. The 45-day time extension not only allows us and Raleigh to determine who's going to be the more effective and efficient lead in repairing the dam, but it also gives us the opportunity to revisit some of these property ownership issues.
One of the things that we've talked to Raleigh about is on the east side of that dam is having a passive recreation easement that allowed us access to that side of the river and also provide easement going north that eventually might lead to Little River Reservoir. So we've had some discussions with them, and they're open to that, and we can clearly maybe even look to get some additional area.
Well, that'd be a good actually be a good greenway going up that way.
Yes, sir, it has good potential. I also like the idea of the Mayor's Blue Way of potentially working in a way to put in a boat launch. And so I'd maybe want to go back and look at that yellow line and maybe the passive recreation easement and make sure we got water access. So to give us that option one day if we want to do a canoe launch or something like that. So I think those are things that we need to kind of fine tune.
Well, if we took it all, if we took it back, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, all Raleigh really needs is what's in the fence, the clear well and the plant, and then the tank down, and I'm sorry, I don't know the terminology, but the blue tank down at the bottom of the hill. Other than that, they don't need any of that.
We can't be certain on that. It would stand to reason based on what Chris described, but
Right.
until we know, we don't really know how much of that land they need.
Okay, and I understand that, but my point is that's part of the discussion.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Specifically. I'm saying what I think they need, and it's, you know, maybe uninformed. Now, if they were going to use that site as a future water treatment facility with an intake up at the Little River, if that, again, is ever built, then that's a different thing.
Well, it looks like to me, all they need is that site up there where they've got, where the plant actually is.
Right. And, well, right down the corner there, you've got that big tank, that big blue tank.
All right, okay.
They need that, and that's exactly, I agree with you, Dale, that's exactly
But that
right.
would be outside of the red area there, and then the area going up the.
Right, so that's a modification we really need to talk about. I will tell you, I'm really concerned about giving our parkway to the city.
That park is used quite a bit. I'd hate to see anything, you know, we went through right much to get what we got over there, so.
Well, anyway, I think everybody's in agreement with 45 days.
I think 45 days is a good idea.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you, guys.
Yes, is doing nothing an option? Doing nothing, is that an option?
It is an option potentially with FEMA. We could leave the dam in the state that it is. And then if we chose to do that, I would definitely recommend us go back and look till we resolve some of the land issues with Raleigh and clean that up from just a clarification standpoint to meet our obligations in our merger agreement contract and also shore up our boundaries where our park is and some of our other future long-range planning issues that we might have. So, hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I really think that we really need that. I think that this adds to the park
Well, yes,
system.
before this summer, though, I would really like for you to put up some warning signs, because there's so much glass in that sand. And I just, I don't want to see the wrong needs to do it, but I walked through that the other day, and there's so much glass, and the summer's coming, there's gonna be a lot of kids trying to get that,
That's a good point, sir. I think with the storm, it did wash up a lot of additional
it did.
sand.
Yeah, it did.
And of course, and some of that is glass, and I think we can see about doing some policing of that area, but also a warning sign is probably good. It's a good suggestion.
You may remember a couple of years ago, somebody had a golf course, or was building a golf course,
Yeah.
and they came and wanted some of that sand.
That's
I
how
think they found out it was too.
Yeah, I remember that phone call back from Floyd, when it washed up. Had several golf courses calling and said, that is the waters of the state. Sorry, we cannot authorize removal of that sand.
But the sand was in pretty bad shape once they got in it too, I think. So, okay, other questions? Anything else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we have a closed session as permitted by North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A5 for the purpose of consulting with the town attorney. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
I moved.
Second.
And second, all in favor? Motion carries. We'll go next door.